INTP versus INTJ. Quick differences. Happy to take a stab at this. Don't forget this is the 4th letter flip, so it's not as intense as the 2nd letter, and it's more intense than the 3rd letter flip. So it's right there in the middle. INTP is just a simple answer if you're talking to somebody without looking at cognitive stack, without looking at the horizontal side of it. Just like, oh, these are both introverted, intuitive, and thinker types. You'd like two people side by side. One will be considering options and considering thoughts. They never need to get to a conclusion. INTPs will they'll spiral forever. They have an infinity loop. An INTJ has definitive answers for their big picture. INTJs will cut corners and be efficient in order to get something done, and they will finish what they start. INTJs have this beginning to end mindset. One freaking line. INTPs, like I mentioned, will just spiral. They don't need to come to some sort of conclusion. That isn't to say they can't finish projects or something. They can be very much involved in that. But it's like they'll just consider endlessly things, and nothing ever has an eventual end. They see this idea of anything can happen, anything can change. There is no definitive answer for anything. So it's like they're the quiet versions of the ENTP, you could say, because that first letter in intensity is very light, which means the top 2 functions and then the 3-4 functions can go like this and zigzag. So basically they are just the contemplative, quiet version of the crazy that the ENTP has. So that allows them to just consider everything. All the time. All the time. All the time. The INTJ is very no emotion in their face. They had a career path planned when they were 2 years old. They have a tendency to see all the loopholes that are around what's going on, and then they can make that plan accordingly. This is why they're considered like the villainous type. They can also be a light version of the INTJ. So somebody who does not have ill intent, but somebody who has a big picture plan, like for themselves typically, or for a career path, allowing them to fulfill that in their objective with their life. And so when they get thrown off, they take a while to reset and they can get depressed and then back on track. INTJs do not have a plan B. They have the plan A. And that is all that exists. That is all that exists. So that right there, without going into cognitive stacks too much, is just the general gist of like, are they coming to some sort of conclusion here? If you want to take this into further depth, like actually analyzing their cognitive stacks, because they're both intuitive, both quiet, both introverted, and they're both thinker types. They will have long, in-depth, and I have seen this, long conversations into the night and into the morning. But without that, you're just looking at what they're built with. Their top 4, they're all different, actually. They actually get pleasure from 2 very different things. And when I say 2, I mean 4 different here and 4 different here. You can see this down here as I'm displaying it. So the INTP is about labeling things, researching things, understanding things, and knowledge itself is what they focus on. So they want to be in the know, and this allows them to find a lot of memes funny. INTPs are like, they find just very subtly. They love to collect memes. They like to collect things. They like to, I've seen them all have a drier sense of humor. So that's an INTP for you. INTJs don't really need to have much expression or emotion. It isn't to say they can't laugh, but an INTJ usually has an answer for something. And the INTJ's dominant functions NI, like I mentioned, so they just see this big picture plan, whereas the INTP is focused on knowing. And the INTJ is more about what can make something move forward. So they're very progressive. INTJs are very progressive, whereas INTPs can just ruminate and just linger. So that affects the cognitive stack side of it. Don't forget that they are also childlike spiders, INTP, so they have SI child. So they collect that information and they organize it, much how the SI dominants, ISFJ and ISTJ use it, but they use it as a child. So they have that as a tantrum function. If they can't get more for their collection, that can cause them a bit of stress. So they love to collect INTPs, and for the FI child of the INTJ, I made a video on this idea as, them being considered black and white thinkers, like their counterpart for the sensory side is ISTJ, but they are not that way. They have this very deep iceberg-like way of living. So everything has a meaning and an intent. And their FI child is how they feel about that stuff, because though they are very efficient and have this big plan, their feelings on their iceberg or the ocean itself around the purpose of that can kind of that's their tantrum side. So if you ever question them or why they're doing something, or to say that they are that their emotions are wrong, the INTJ is going to have a tissy fit. And the way that they'll do that is I've seen this one INTJ his nostrils will flare up. because they don't show so much expression. So that when I see that, I'm like, oh gosh, this guy's gonna get it, or I'm gonna get it. You know, whoever irritated this INTJ. So that's how that is. And these are very subtle differences, but when you're so in depth with all this stuff, when you see these two side by side, you're gonna be like, oh, they're very different. And then, of course, you have their inferior functions, which is the thing that they're kind of intimidated for, yet what they're striving for. So the INTJ is SE inferior, so they want to be present because their opposite, their literal subconscious is me, the ESFP, so everything that I display and how flashy and movement and how twitchy and fast I am, they want that for what they are deep down, because deep down they are the ESFP. Likewise, the subconscious for the INTP is ESFJ. I never had to think about that one, actually. Yeah, ESFJ. So that's where the FE kicks in for the INTP as their inferior function. And when you are dealing with an INTP who is very well-rounded, it's very easy to find a healthy INTP. They can come across as very friendly and social because of this considering factor that they have. They just absorb everything. And to a lot of people, they come across warm and friendly, even though they are actually a thinker type. So don't be confused on that, because there you go for your warm and cold side. Basically, what that implies is they want warmth and friendship and stuff. However, the logical side and the reasoning side of life supersedes your emotion. And that literally is the thinker versus feeler contrast. Now, both of these are thinkers, so we don't have to go into the differences there, but the FE inferior aspirational function means the INTP does enjoy being around people, but they have difficulties making barriers in the very moment to which they're striving for, because don't forget, they're SE blind. So they can't in the moment create boundaries and say, okay, you finish over here, you were talking to me over here. They can't control like a conversation. I've never seen an INTP be able to control a group of people trying to get their attention. INTPs, I think, feel intimidated by other people's feelings, so they have a difficult time having that social control. That's actually extremely profound. I've never actually voiced it like that before, but I have seen it from the handful of INTPs that I personally know. And that just kind of shakes them, that rattles them. So if you want to rattle an INTP, that's how you do it. Now, INTJ, they overlook minute details because they're so focused on the bigger picture. This is where also the SE inferior aspirational part comes in. I know this is extremely in-depth and complex for a lot of you. This is more upon like the super advanced levels. But these are just, we're only looking at top 4 here. And don't forget that if you really want to just jump to some of the more advanced stuff with the time we have left, this is probably going to time me out. But INTJs have a stigma of being a villain. And like I mentioned earlier, this is probably where their demon function kicks in. So their spiderweb, their SI is in a demonic form. So they have the ability to collect and use anything that they have observed in you against you down the road. Because don't forget, they can do that. It's crazy how that all works out. The demon side for the INTP is their own feelings. So how they feel about something. And if you hurt an INTP's feelings, like that goes extremely deep. That hurts their trust levels with you. That hurts their morals and their values, which they're already like shaken with your side of that, being FE inferior aspirational. But the FI demon itself is like, whoa. You know, that cuts extremely deep for the INTP. Whereas the INTJ is more like, they're hurt, sure, they won't show it as much, hardly at all, but they can use that for their gain down the road, and that's how the INTJs have that stigma of the villainous, mindset. So think Moriarty for INTJ, somebody who has this crazy big picture, like, okay, I'm going to control this somehow plan, INTJ. The INTP will basically turn on themselves a little bit and then bypass your feelings to just say, this is not logical, I'm going to put up these barriers, and they come across a little more warm than the INTJ. So that's my opinion. That's my ESFP filter. If you have a different opinion, feel free to share it, or just tweak whatever I've said a little bit there or whatever, or just change something entirely. I don't care. I'm a P personality, so I'm just open, kind of like how the INTPs are open. So happy to see your guys' interpretation of these differences. I love you guys. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Eric Osmond, and we'll see you later. And don't forget to check out the new stuff on the YouTube channel. New stuff coming out all the time over there. Link in the bio.